morning and welcome to our episode 5 of our community-based podcast. Unfortunately, my illustrious co-host Adam Zettel was not able to be with us today, so we wish him all the best. He'll be back with us at our next one. But we are fortunate to have Rod Heatherton, our assistant superintendent, with us today. So good morning, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you here, and certainly have a lot of experience and background here as a lifelong Creeker. And we're also really excited today because we have an opportunity to talk with our brand new police chief, Chief Matt Bade. So thank you, Chief, for being with us.
Thanks for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah. We want to start by, this is a relatively new position for you, but you have been with the Metro Authority since its inception. And so talk to us a little bit about the transition, and then maybe a little bit about your background and how you got to the position that you're in, and how you really made it to this post.
Sure. I grew up in a law enforcement family. My dad was a Flint police officer. So law enforcement was in my blood at a very young age. I pursued that career. I started out in the city of Birmingham. After a few years, I moved to the city of Burton, where I finished out a career there, finished as a detective. And then I started at Swartz Creek as a lieutenant in 2013. About a year later, discussions ensued about creating a regional police department. And the next few years became combination of research and transition at the same time. There's a lot of interest in a regional police department, in the benefits that holds. And the question is, how do we do it? And that became quite a project. And fortunately enough, the leaders in Swartz Creek and Muddy Township were very forward thinking, and it was the right time and the right place. And through that time, as we actually became the Metro Police Authority, both existing departments were actually dissolved, no longer exist, and transitioned into a brand new police department. So we built a new police department from the ground up, which was challenging and a tremendous amount of work, but it gave us the opportunity, rather than just moving one department into the other, it gave us the opportunity to create a fresh start. And the challenges of bringing two different cultures and two different agencies together, basically kind of dissolving those and starting fresh. And I think we're well on our way to do that.
That's great. I wonder, because you did talk about the merging of two cultures, of two different departments together.
Right.
And now, of course, the idea, as I understand it, is that you have some benefit, some cost benefit by sharing services and by thinking about how we can really make this an efficient way to protect our citizens. But in the meantime, you have that internal culture, which is so important as somebody who also understands organizational psychology and all of that. How did you merge two completely different cultures together, and how is that going? You think when you have guys that had one expectation and other guys that had another set of expectations, and now we're coming in and trying to create something new. I think the idea is, of course, that you're creating something better because you're trying to pull the strengths from both departments. But talk about that process a little bit more.
Yes. One of the things we did early on, which I think proved to be very beneficial, is when we were initiating the process, kind of testing it out to see how it would work, we created a shared services agreement where both departments still existed, but they existed under the umbrella of a common administrative team. Chief Dan Atkinson became the chief of both departments. Rick Klolinger retired from the city of Swartz Creek. He became deputy chief. And then I was lieutenant, and the Muddy Township sergeants were in place. Through that shared service agreement, we swore both departments into each other's jurisdictions, and we started creating a working relationship. The original idea was to track how much assistance we could provide each other. That was the original intent, just to be able to show this can work, and this is how it's beneficial to both communities. Additional manpower available, resources and such. But what we kind of an unintended consequence of that was the officers began working together, and they began building those working relationships. So that was a big benefit of that, probably more so than tracking the actual assists back and forth.
Sure.
So when the Metro was launched, we made it a point to try to get everybody into the same building as fast as possible. And that was a struggle because we had the Swartz Creek office, which was too small. We had the Mundy Township office, which was bigger, but still too small. But we decided to move everybody into Mundy Township so that we had officers coming in to shift together, the guys in the locker room, the girls in the locker room changing together, talking, socializing, having briefings before shifts. Started that, really played on that working relationship. There was obviously, as you can imagine, there was a lot of anxiety prior to this because they were still working under separate contracts. So I think once we crossed that hurdle of the contract and the officers realized that they were going to be treated very well and that we wanted them to be a part of this, we wanted them to buy in and believe into the system. Sure. It really changed. It turned the corner. And at this point, the officers have a belief in this, and they buy in, and they appreciate it. And what the other aspect of this is, different areas kind of have different expectations for policing. And so there was a bit of a learning curve there as well. So officers that maybe worked Mundy Township and weren't used to the expectations of Swartz Creek and vice versa, it took time to get that understanding. And once they did, there's buy-in, and the officers my officers are doing a great job.
Yeah, that's great.
You can never discount the value of relationships. We talk about that all the time in the schools, and we're trying to make an organizational shift, whether it's in curriculum or finance. But what it really comes down to is how are people interacting together.
Absolutely.
And when they interact well together, then you can do things better and faster. In Swartz Creek, we're a community school district, and so we're not just about what happens, in the classroom from 8 to 3. We reach out in the community with all sorts of activities and co-adventures, and we bring the community in, and we try to get out into the community. What is your philosophy as a police department, and how you're visible and how you interact with the community of Swartz Creek?
When I came from Burton to Swartz Creek, it was a bit of an eye-opener for me. Burton is a large, spread-out place, and I don't mean this in any sense, any negative way at all, but there's a much more feel of community in the city of Swartz Creek. It's smaller. It's a tight-knit community. People know each other. They're proud of their schools, are proud of their city, and that was really a breath of fresh air for me to come here, and I really appreciated it. And their public services are extremely important to them. Their police and public safety is very important to them. So my philosophy and our intent is to continue to provide that visibility and that community contact, not only through formal programs, but also through just non-enforcement contact with officers stopping, chatting with people in the neighborhood. I had an officer last summer who saw a little girl over in an apartment complex trying to figure out how to ride a bike. So she stopped, had time, she taught her how to ride a bike. Those kind of things are what we stress. And those are the kind of contacts that you show the community that you care. It humanizes officers to the citizens, and it creates that relationship where we're approachable. We're here to help you and address your problems, and we want to develop that two-way relationship.
Yeah, as I hear you talking about the perception of police officers, and I think my dad was a state police officer for a number of years, as you know, and one of the things that I think has changed, and it's made it more challenging for police officers now, is that there has been a change in perception, I think, nationally, Um, but I still think locally we have a long standing history here in our community of people that really not only respect but they appreciate our law enforcement officers. And it's one of the things that's really frustrating to me is, when I hear a police officer, that now that will say, you just never know when you pull somebody over what type of respect or what their expectation of you. It's almost like there's an assumption that you're doing something wrong. And so it's just such a difficult job, and so to keep people safe and to put yourselves out there is just so important, and we need you, and so I know that can be a challenge. So I hope that the guys and men and women in the force are feeling the support of this community, at least, even though I know it's a challenge across the country.
Oh, absolutely. And Swartz Creek, we definitely you notice that support from the citizens. When I was driving a marked vehicle, people wave to you. They want to talk to you. They want to engage with you. And the same thing goes for Mundy Township. And we have a shared service agreement right now with Gaines Township. And that same respect for each other exists in those communities as well. I just give you a quick example. Last Christmas, we were in our new building, and actually, last couple Christmases, my first experience with the Mundy Township side once we merged. And like Swartz Creek, around Christmas time and holidays, our break room just fills up with homemade cookies and treats, things people bring to thank us, and the businesses, and it's just it really reminds you that there are people that you're serving that do care about you, and it's very nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ben and I don't get as many treats now that we're not in the classroom.
Get it back into a building if we want the cookies.
That's right.
One of the things that I've been thinking about a little bit, you mentioned earlier about local government and ordinances and things like that. Maybe talk a little bit about some tangible ways or some ideas that maybe you have about how schools, local government, law enforcement can really work together to create a safer community. What are some ideas or some things that maybe you've seen in your experience and background that really look at that synergy between all three of those hubs?
I am a huge believer in what's called problem-oriented policing. And what that entails is basically a comprehensive approach to disorder problems. As law enforcement, like you see on TV, we chase the bad guys, we arrest the bad guys, but the community looks to us for a lot of things that are beyond that. They look to us to handle all kinds of disorder issues. So in order to do that, we have to develop partnerships with schools, with local governments, with the DPWs, with any agency that can assist us in whatever problem we might be facing. It could be a traffic situation where we're getting accidents at the same intersection, or we need to work with the DPW or the road commission because there's something wrong with the way something's engineered. It could be a school issue where we've got who knows what, but going on. But we need to partner. We had to develop those relationships. But recently, we just one of the things, as an example, is code enforcement issues are very important to the city of Swartz Creek and Mundy Township. And the communities were looking to us to handle that. Well, we realized that it was a bit of a fractured approach, and it wasn't very efficient. So we approached both municipalities with the idea of creating a violations bureau within Metro. We can make it more efficient. We can handle these problems, and it handles that disorder at a very low level. But I guess you can go back even to New York City when Mayor Giuliani was in power. He approached that. He take the ground level misdemeanor crimes, the code enforcement issues, you start cleaning that up. Your community looks better. You set an expectation for your community and what people want. So I guess it's a long answer, but through that comprehensive approach to disorder maintenance, those partnerships with the schools and local governments is extremely important.
So, what are some examples of these code violations that citizens might call you and ask for help on, or that you have to approach people and talk to them about cleaning something up?
Yeah, the biggest thing is blight issues in neighborhoods. Cars that may be parked in backyards, people not taking care of their lawns. And I don't mean somebody not mowing the lawn for a couple days or a couple weeks. We're talking about, where it has been mowed in weeks, and you've got weeds and things that are just, that you've got a nice neighborhood and you've got a couple houses that just kind of stick out, and it becomes a blight issue. And, if you think about driving through a city, you can tell those cities that pay attention to that. They stick out. The cities look good, and that in itself, when you pay attention to those type of code issues, it gives a sense of guardianship. And people who are looking to do bad things, it's a psychological aspect. But if you're going to go into an area that looks like there's eyes on, people are taking care of things, it may give you a pause to commit your crimes there, or maybe go elsewhere.
Yeah, and I think I agree wholeheartedly, and I've appreciated our relationship in terms of you assisting the school whenever we have something that comes up, and it's so critical as we have 4,000 people that we're trying to serve every single day just within our school, housed within our school buildings, but. I think about visibility, and so it's the community policing that you're talking about, and making sure that the blight issues are taken care of, and that some of those smaller crimes are taken care of. But it's also, I think, that people see a regular presence there. We have partnered with you, and it's been a great relationship in trying to bring more police presence and visibility to our buildings and to our school district. And so this year, we have actually launched the addition of another officer, another part-time officer, and I'd like you to maybe just kind of talk about your vision for having an increase in law enforcement here in the schools, kind of dedicated service to the schools for visibility. Can you talk about your thoughts on how that might help additionally create a safer school setting as well?
Oh, absolutely. I think when you and I had talked earlier this year about creating some additional security in the schools, and when you approached us with your thought of maybe having Metro provide that, I thought it was a great idea. It provides security, but it also provides security in the form of a uniformed and marked police cruiser driving into your school lots and being present in your buildings. And I don't think you can really get much more of a better deterrent than that.
No, that's great. That's exactly what we want.
So with you have the school resource officer, and then you've got added we call it the school safety officer, who doesn't have those same responsibilities as a school resource officer, but his responsibility is to provide just that, visibility and presence at the schools on a rotational basis. He's going to show up at the schools on a varied time schedule and be present. I think it's a great idea.
And we're excited about it.
It also, as a side benefit, there's another marked cruiser on the road traversing the municipalities.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think of all of the different places that that cruiser could go. All the way from Clayton Township to Gaines Township, all the way where Morris is in Mundy, and then all the way up clear by Flint Township and through the city, of course, in our middle school and high school. So lots of visibility and coverage by simply having that additional cruiser. So
Yes.
We're very thankful for that. And I think that really gets to that whole idea of building that community presence that you talked about.
Yes.
So one of the things that I know is going to be on some of the people that are probably watching this today, and we have a bond proposal for the ballot in November, and one of the things that is on that ballot is safety and security. So we're doing a lot to our entrances to try and make sure that they're secure, that if somebody were to try and come in and do harm, we could lock them into that space until they could be subdued. We have digital locking systems and all sorts of different technologies that we're looking at and that you've provided some assistance in. But this is a real issue that we face now. I mean, we know, unfortunately, and our hearts go out to the people from Parkland, Florida, and everything that happened there. And we just have so many things that we have to think about now in school that we didn't have to think about years ago. And so in this post 9/11 era, and then also in the era of school shootings, what are some of the things that maybe you can think of that our local communities or even our citizens could help prepare for, be aware of the potential of a threat like that?
Mm-hmm. Well, ever since 9/11 happened, the Department of Homeland Security has pressed the phrase, if you see something, say something. That is probably the simplest, easiest thing to consider. And when you look at many, and if not all, but many of the school shootings or terrorist incidents, domestic terrorists that have happened since 9/11, somebody knew something. Somebody knew something was not right. Somebody knew something, there was something off. And there were probably multiple chances of intervention in many, many of those situations that were never taken advantage of because the information wasn't passed along, or if it was mishandled. And this bond issue with your security proposal, I really hope that your community strongly considers this proposal. I think it's a very, very important bond issue. I personally think that the community needs to pass this. It'd be, how tragic would it be to be able to have prevented something, and you look back and say, boy, I wish we would have passed that bond proposal. It cost money, absolutely, but what's the benefit? If we can provide more safety and security to our students and staff at our school buildings that are just incredibly soft targets, as has been evidenced by the school shootings. And you think about, in the past, you think, boy, these bad things happen in big cities. Well, guess what? I mean, as history has proven otherwise, it's not true. It can happen anywhere.
Right.
And you just cannot predict it. And so I guess two things to that point. I would strongly encourage the citizens to pass this bond proposal to better secure the school district's buildings. And back to if you see something, if you know something, if you sense something, please call somebody and let them know. It's so important.
That's great, and we appreciate that support. And I think it's a great point that you bring up, that so many of these tragedies could have been prevented by somebody that maybe had heard that somebody was, talking about committing a crime, or somebody was acting somewhat different than they were. And a lot of times people are afraid to, speak up. And just such great advice, I think, to say, look, you cannot take anything for granted. And when you see that, it's about protecting lives. And so really making sure that that's done. So that's great advice.
So on those lines of where you're really trying to look out for threats and be proactive, how do you also provide the community with that warm feeling, with that friendly atmosphere? Because threats are pretty serious, and you take a lot of precautions, but you also want to be able to reach out to the community and help probably, relieve some fears that aren't, real fears, but, people get scared when you start talking about threats and safety. So what's your approach?
Well, first, anytime we have a situation where there's a threat, our first priority is to figure out if it's credible or not. We're going to go into investigative mode, enforcement mode right away. Once we determine what it is, we're going to be very transparent with the community to help relieve those fears or give them the information so they know. I think transparency is huge. It shows that we have integrity. We want to share that. We don't want to hide things from the community. We want that open communication. The other part of that is it kind of goes back to the community policing aspect, where we're working to build those ground level relationships with people. And so then you have you talked about the warm and cozy feeling. We're still there. We're like, I don't know, maybe the sheepdog protecting the sheep.
Yeah.
We're going to take care of you, but we're going to watch out for the wolves too.
Yeah.
And so we're still going to be there in that community relationship and foster that as much as possible. And that in itself maybe helps people trust a particular officer if they see something, or if they know, or if they suspect something. They can reach out and say, hey, Officer Jones, I'm concerned about this. But they have that personal relationship with them, and that it breaks down some barriers. I think, that you go back, policing has transitioned through different phases over time, where the academics or the policing world thinks this is the best way to do it. Because for a long time, officers were in their cruisers just answering the radio, and they were boom, boom, boom. They kind of lost that community feel, and we've kind of gone full circle from when Sir Robert Peel kind of instituted the modern ethical policing, that the police are the people and the people are the police. We're trying to get back to that.
That's great.
And I think transparency is such an important part of that, especially when you talk about relieving fears and people just trust. I think since Ben has come in, we've taken that approach in the schools too, is when something's going on, or when there's a lot of communication happening, say on social media, or there's a problem that we're aware of, Ben gets a message out very timely, very quickly, lays out, hey, this is what we know is going on. This is our approach. This is our options. This is when we're going to let you know what the results of what we think is the best move forward is going to be. And I think that having him approach that this way in the schools, and you're approaching that with the police department, is huge in bringing the community together, so that they understand that everyone who is in public service is there to support them, to work for them, to help them out when they're in a bind, and that we're solving problems along the way.
We hosted an open house early August, and we had a great turnout. We're gonna after that turnout, our officers were so excited about it. They hadn't been a part of something like that before, and they were like, "Hey, we got to do this again." So we talked about it, and we thought, "Hey, let's make this an annual event." Because one thing I've realized is that there's a lot of people that just really don't understand how we do our job, and I think it's very important for the public to understand how we do our job and actually what we do. And I invite the public, ask us if you want to tour the building, you want to come talk to us, you want to see what we do and how we do it, come to our open houses, come to our functions. We're going to be sitting down, I think it's the 22nd of this month. The fire department, Swartz Fire Department, is hosting a coffee and donuts Saturday morning, and they invited us to be a part of that. So we're going to be there. We'll answer questions. We want to educate people.
Yeah. Well, and I think that you do have that very open door policy, and I have felt that people have even said to me, how you've invited them in, and that's such a huge piece. So what can we think about or look for from the Metro over the next year, or for anyone watching this podcast or listening to it, what would you like them to think about or know just about your plans for the upcoming year? Anything you want to share?
Well, one of the things we have, we call pillars that we're building our culture on. One of those pillars is continual progressive innovation and improvement. We want to be innovative in how we serve our communities. So there's a couple things that we kind of have on the drawing board right now. One of those is one of the things that we deal with a lot in Swartz Creek and Mundy Township is traffic issues. So we're looking at maybe creating some kind of a traffic enforcement division to address traffic issues. We are also looking to, going back to when I referenced, we're expected to handle disorder that you may not see on TV. We're not the crime fighting stuff, but unfortunately, one of the things we deal with and what's out in our communities is mental health issues. And we're looking at maybe working to partner with some community mental health agencies and create a mental health crisis team.
Wow.
So that when we have people that are in some sort of crisis, then our officers can identify that. Instead of going back to their residents over and over again, telling them the same thing or trying to have an ambulance take them to the hospital, maybe if we can train our officers and we have a team of police officers and mental health professionals that can go to someone who is having problems on a regular basis and treat them, get them to where they need to be, and maybe come up with a better resolution to their problems. That's out there. That'll be a project we're gonna work on.
So exciting to hear, and I think many of the topics that we talked about today, from safety to building relationships, there is definitely an epidemic in our society right now with, I believe, some of the lowest mental health that we've seen in a long time. Just people that are struggling with depression or they're struggling with anxiety. We see some of the trauma that our children come from, And so these issues have to be addressed in a holistic method, and I think it's both the law enforcement side, it's the school side, it's also bringing in the mental health professionals, and that's just really exciting to hear. It has been a tremendous opportunity to speak with you, and we thank you for taking the time. I know your time is precious, and coming out and visiting with us and sharing with us a little bit of what you do. And Rod, I thank you for taking time as well. And it's just a pleasure to know both of you and serve the community together.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it very much, and hopefully people can put the 22nd on their calendar and come out and have a cup of coffee and a donut and ask questions or meet myself. I'll be there in a few officers. So
that's great.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Yeah, we will be back on the next podcast. We'll be live in about 2 weeks, and so we'll get to episode 6 next. And thank you all for tuning in today.